Hello and welcome to the Summon, the African Summon, where we connect you to Africa and African culture. In today's edition, we continue our book reading series. This time, our short story is The Madman by Nigeria's Chinua Achebe. Do invite your friends, neighbors, and loved ones and join us for this read. While you're at it, do subscribe to our channel, like our videos, and share. Welcome. The Madman. He was drawn to markets and straight roads, not any tiny neighborhood market where a handful of garrulous women might gather at sunset to gossip and buy ogili for the evening soup, but a huge engulfing bazaar beckoning people, familiar and strange from far and near, and not any dusty old footpath beginning in this village and ending in that stream, but broad, black, mysterious highways without beginning or end. After much wandering, he had discovered two such markets linked together by such a highway, and so ended his wandering. One market was Afro, and the other Ike. The 2 days between them suited him very well. Before setting out for Ike, he had ample time to wind up his business properly at Afro. He passed the night there, putting right again his hurt after a day of defilement by two fat-bottom market women who said it was their market stall. At first, he had put up a fight, but the women had gone and brought their menfolk, 4 hefty beasts of the bush, to whip him out of the hurt. After that, he always avoided them, moving out on the morning of the market and back in at dusk to pass the night. Then in the morning, he rounded off his affairs swiftly and set out on the long, beautiful bow constructor of a road to Ike, in the distant town of Obo. He held his staff and cudgel at the ready in his right hand, and with the left, he steadied the basket of his belongings on his head. He had got himself this cudgel lately to deal with little beasts on the way who threw stones at him and made fun of their mother's nakedness, not his own. He used to walk in the middle of the road, holding it in conversation. But one day the driver of a mammy wagon and his mate came down on him, shouting and pushing and slapping his face. They said their lorry very nearly ran over their mother, not him. After that, he avoided those noisy lorries too, and the vagabonds inside them. Having walked one day and one night, he was now close to Ike Marketplace. From every little side road, crowds of market people poured into the big highway to join the enormous flow to Ike. Then he saw some young ladies with water pots on their heads coming towards him, unlike all the rest, away from the market. This surprised him. Then he saw 2 more water pots rise out of a sloping footpath leading off his side of the highway. He felt thirsty then and stopped to think it over. Then he set down his basket on the roadside and turned into the sloping footpath. But first he begged his highway to not be offended or continue the journey without him. "I'll get some for you too," he said coaxingly, with a tender backward glance. "I know you're thirsty." Nwibe was a man of high standing in Obu and was rising higher, a man of wealth and integrity. He had just given notice to all the Ozu men of the town that he proposed to seek admission into their honored hierarchy in the coming initiation season. "Your proposal is excellent," said the men of the tribe. "When we see, we shall believe," which was their dignified way of telling you to think it over once again and make sure you have the means to go through with it. For Ozu is not a child naming ceremony. And where is the man to hide his face who begins the Ozu dance and then his foot struck in the arena? But in this instance, the caution of the elders was no more than a formality. For Nwibe was such a sensible man that no one could think of him beginning something he was not sure to finish. On that Ike day, Nwibe had risen early so as to visit his farm beyond the stream and do some light work before going to the market at midday to drink a horn or two of palm wine with his peers and perhaps buy the bundle of roofing thatch for the repair of his wife's hurts. As for his own hurt, he had a couple of years back settled it finally by changing his thatch roof to zinc. Sooner or later, he could do the same for his wives. He could have done Mboye's hurt right away, but decided to wait until he could do the two together, or else Udenku would set the entire compound on fire. Udenku was the junior wife by 3 years, but she never let that worry her. Happily, Mboye was a woman of peace who rarely demanded the respect due her from the other. She would suffer Udenku's provoking tongue, sometimes for a whole day without offering a word in reply. And when she did reply at all, her words were always few and her voice very low. That very morning, Udenku had accused her of spite and all kinds of madness on account of a little dog. "What has a little dog done to you?" she screamed loud for half the village to hear. "I ask you, Mboye, what is the offense of a puppy this early in the day?" "What your puppy did this early in the day," replied Mboye, "is that he put his shit mouth into my soup pot. And then I smacked him." "You smacked him? Why don't you cover your soup pot? Is it easier to hit a dog than to cover a pot? Is a small puppy to have more sense than a woman who leaves her soup pot about?" "Enough from you, Udenku." "It's not enough, Mboye. It's not enough. If that dog owes you any debt, I want to know. Everything I have, even a little dog I bought to eat my infant's excrement, keeps you awake at night. You are a bad woman, Mboye. You are a very bad woman." Nwibe listened to all of this in silence in his heart. He knew from the vigor of Udenko's voice that she could go on like this till market time. So he intervened in his characteristic manner by calling out his senior wife. "Mboye, let me have peace this early morning. Don't you hear all the abuses, Udenku? I hear nothing at all from Udenku. I want peace in my compound. If Udenku is crazy, must everyone else go crazy with her? Is one crazy woman not enough in my compound so early in the day?" "The great judge has spoken," sang Udenku in a snaring sing-song. "Thank you, great judge. Udenku is mad. Udenku is always mad. But those of you who are all saying, shut your mouth, shameless woman, or a wild beast will lick your eyes for you this morning. When will you learn to keep your badness within this compound instead of shouting it to all Ubo to hear? I say shut your mouth." There was silence then except for Udunko's infant, whose yelling had gone up till then unnoticed, swallowed up by the larger noise of the adults. "Don't cry, my father. Don't cry," said Udonko to him. "They want to kill your dog, but our people say that the man who decides to chase after a chicken, for him is the fall." By the middle of the morning, Nwibe had done all the work he had to do on his farm and was on his way again to prepare for market. By the little stream, he decided, as he always did, to wash off the sweat of work. So he put his clothes on a huge boulder by the men's bathing section and waded in. There was nobody else around because of the time of the day and because it was market day. But from instinctive modesty, he turned to face the forest away from their approaches. The madman watched him for quite a while. Each time he bent down to carry water in cupped hands From the shallow stream to his head and body, the madman smiled at his parted behind, and then remembered. This was the same hefty man who brought 3 others like him and whipped me out of my hurt in the Afo market. He nodded to himself, and he remembered again. And this was the same vagabond who descended on me from the lorry in the middle of the highway. He nodded once again, and then he remembered yet again. This was the same fellow who set his children to throw stones at me and make remarks about their mother's buttocks, not mine. Then he laughed. Nwibe turned sharply around and saw the naked man laughing. The deep groove of the stream amplified his laughter. Then he stopped as suddenly as he had begun. The merriment vanished from his face. I have caught you naked, he said. Nwibe ran a hand swiftly down his face to clear his eyes of water. I say, I have caught you naked, with your thing dangling about. I see you are hungry for a whipping, said Nwibe with quiet menace in his voice. For a madman is said to be easily scared away by the very mention of a whip. Wait till I get up there. What are you doing? Drop it at once. I say, drop it. The madman picked up Nwibe's cloth and wrapped it around his own waist. He looked down at himself and began to laugh again. I will kill you, screamed Nwibe as he splashed towards the bank, maddened by anger. I will whip that madness out of you today. They ran all the way up the steep and rocky footpath, hedged in by the shadowy green forest. A mist gathered and hung about Nwibe's vision as he ran, stumbled, fell, pulled himself up again and stumbled on, shouting and cursing. The other, despite his unaccustomed encumbrance, steadily increased his lead, for he was spare and wiry, a thing made for speed. Furthermore, he did not waste his breath shouting and cursing, he just ran. 2 girls going down to the stream saw a man running up the slope towards them, pursued by a stark naked madman. They threw down their pots and fled screaming. When Nwibe emerged into the full glare of the highway, he could not see his clothes clearly anymore, and his chest was on the point of exploding from the fire and torment within. But he kept running. He was only vaguely aware of crowds of people on all sides, and he appealed to them tearfully without stopping. Hold the madman, he's got my club. By this time, the man with the cloth was practically lost among the much dense crowds far in front, so that the link between him and the madman was no longer clear. Now Nwibe continually bumped against people's backs and then laid flat, a frail old man struggling with a stubborn goat on a leash. Stop the madman, he shouted hoarsely, his heart tearing to shreds. He's got my club. Everyone looked at him first in surprise and then less surprised, because strange sights are common in a great market. Some of them even laughed. They've got his cloth, he said. That's a new one, I'm sure. He hardly looks mad yet. Doesn't he have people, I wonder? People are so careless these days. Why can't they keep proper watch over their sick relatives, especially on the day of the market? Further up the road, on the very brink of the marketplace, 2 men from Nwibe's village recognized him, and throwing down the one his long basket of yams, the other his calabash of palm oil held on a loop, gave desperate chase to stop him setting foot irrevocably within the occult territory of the powers of the market. But it was in vain. When finally they caught him, it was well inside the crowded square. Udenko, in tears, tore off her top cloth, which they draped on him, and led him home by the hand. He spoke just once about a madman who took his cloth at the stream. "It's all right," said one of the men in the tone of the father to a crying child. They led and he followed blindly, his heavy chest heaving up and down in silent weeping. Many more people from his village, a few from his in-laws, and one or two others from the mother's place had joined the grief-stricken party. One man whispered to another that it was the worst kind of madness, deep and tongue-tied. "May it end ill for him who did this," prayed the other. The first medicine man his relatives consulted refused to take him on, out of some kind of integrity. "I could say yes to you and take your money," he said, "but this is not my way. My powers of cure are known throughout Olu and Igbo. But never have I professed to bring back to life a man who has sipped the spirit waters of ani-mmo. It is the same with a madman who of his own accord delivers himself to the divinities of the marketplace. You should have kept better watch over him." "Don't blame us too much," said Nwibe's relatives. "When he left home this morning, his senses were as complete as yours and mine now. Don't blame us too much." "Yes, I know. It happens that way sometimes. And they are the ones that medicine will not reach, I know." "Can you do nothing at all then? Not even to untie his tongue?" "Nothing can be done. They have already embraced him. It is like a man who runs away from the oppression of his fellows to the grove of an alisu, of an alusi, and says to him, 'Take me, O spirit. I am your Osu.' No man can touch him thereafter. He is free, and yet no power can break his bondage. He is free of men, but bound to a god." The second doctor was not as famous as the first and not so strict. He said the case was bad, very bad indeed. But no one folds his arms because the condition of his child is beyond hope. He must still group around and do his best. His hearers nodded in eager agreement, and then he muttered into his own inward ear, "If doctors were to send away every patient whose cure they were uncertain of, how many of them would eat one meal in a whole week from their practice?" Nwibe was cured of his madness. That humble practitioner who did the miracle became overnight the most celebrated mad doctor of his generation. They called him sojourner to the land of the spirits. Even so, it remains true that madness may indeed sometimes depart, but never with all his clamorous train. Some of these always remain, the trailers of madness, you might call them, to haunt the doorway of the eyes. For how could a man be the same again, of whom witnesses from all the lands of Olu and Igbo have once reported that they saw today a fine, hefty man in his prime, stark naked, tearing through the crowds to answer the call of the marketplace? Such a man is marked forever. Nwibe became a quiet, withdrawn man, avoiding whenever he could, the boisterous side of life of his people. 2 years later, before another initiation season, he made a new inquiry about joining the community of titled men in his town. Had they received him, perhaps he may have become at least partially restored. But those old Zoom men, dignified and polite as ever, deftly steered the conversation away to other matters. The end. And with that ends our story for today. I hope you enjoyed the read. Thank you for responding to this sermon. Be sure to subscribe to our channel, like our videos, and share. Have a good night.